Welcome to another episode of InRange. I'm here today with Sinister Rifleman Russell Fagan, and we have a Iron Horse Sentry 12 magazine-fed pump-action shotgun. And Fagan, why don't you tell me why you brought this to us today?
So I was kind of professionally interested in this because of the way it's manufactured. It has a polymer lower with an integral pistol grip and trigger guard.
Okay.
The upper is a big aluminum extrusion. The upper is the serialized part on this, by the way. So it gets extruded out and then they machine all the features into it, but the rough outer dimensions are already there.
It's a singular piece that they just mill away that which is not shotgun.
Right.
Okay.
So, and it's a really simple design. So from a manufacturing standpoint, I thought it was kind of neat and I wanted to give it a try. It has some unique features. It has AR style fire controls and magazine release, both left and right handed. They're ambidextrous. The fire control group is not true AR-15 though, to interface with the pump action bolt.
So it is AR-15 like. So in this regard, so your interest in this is pretty much that it's an interesting design and an interesting manufacturing style to make this thing.
Right.
Now you're no stranger to mag-fed shotguns.
No, I've been using mag-fed shotguns since 2006 when the first Saiga 12s started coming back in after the assault weapons ban. Used those for a number of years, then the Vepr 12, then the Mossberg 590M, and I'm sure some people will remember my Civet 12 review on the channel as well.
Yeah, that one took a lot of modification to make it work at all. Now, I kind of remember at one point this was kind of floating around in the industry as Blackwater.
Yeah, I think they were selling it under the Blackwater brand as like a marking variance build for about a year prior to it coming out under their own brand. But Iron Horse tells me they are no longer directly affiliated with Blackwater. They're solely marketing it under the Iron Horse brand now. And
this was designed to be purely a tactical shotgun. This thing is for combat and tactical use essentially only, right?
Right. It has a cylinder barrel. There's no chokes. It has a 12-inch length of pull.
Slightly under A1.
Yeah. And they tell me the logic for that was so that people wearing body armor could use it comfortably.
Okay.
I think I'd prefer it to be just a little bit longer to mirror that 13-inch length of pull I'm used to. But they definitely designed it as a tactical shotgun first and foremost. Yeah,
we've said here on InRange that A1 is practically the perfect length, so they made it a little shorter, which we'll see how that works out while we're shooting it. But every time I look at essentially a collapsible stock, they're almost always set to A1. People don't even realize they set it to A1. It just turns out to be the sweet spot. So 1 inch shorter doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a difference.
Yep. It has a nice rubber butt pad to help absorb recoil. The action is very smooth because there's no elevator assembly like in a traditional pump action shotgun.
Yeah, it's just stripping the round out of the magazine directly into the chamber.
Right.
All right, so we've got some magazines here. You've got 5 and 8 round magazines, is that correct?
Correct.
And they're polymer mags.
Yep.
And we're going to go ahead and get some live fire right now, and then we're going to do later in the video, we're going to do some teardown, talk about how the gun works a little more specifically, and kind of just do some shooting and analysis.
Yep.
So why don't we get our ears on, load up, and hit the target.
The mags are straight insert. Push, pull, make sure it's locked, and then use the slide release that's just underneath the magazine release, pushing down on that to chamber the first round. Safety off. All right, so I have some Estate double-aught buck. Let's see how it patterns.
That looks like a pretty good pattern. What distance are we at?
We were shooting at 10 yards.
Yep.
And it looks like we got about a 8-inch pattern out of it.
Nice and centered up, and this is a double-aught buck?
Yeah, 9 pellet.
Yep.
And a little bit better than you'd expect. You'd normally expect about 1 inch of spread for every yard you're shooting.
Yep.
So around 8 inches at 10 yards is doing pretty decent.
Yeah, with just essentially stock ammo, nothing special, no controlled flight or anything like that.
Right, with the cylinder barrel. So
yeah, better than what you'd expect out of a standard combat shotgun. So you've got some other buckshot too.
Yeah, I got some 12 pellet S&B. Let's see what that does.
Let's paint it and do that.
Now I have the 12 pellet S&B. These are 2 3/4 inch shells, but they have the European style crimps. So they're almost like 2 7/8. So let's see how these cycle through and how they pattern. right, let's go down range and check it out.
All right, so this was cellular and below 12 pellet.
Correct.
So looks about the same.
Yeah, and I think if we do it in slow motion, you'll see like some of those patterns individually were a little bit tighter. Definitely more oomph with this load. You could see the target rocking under recoil, bouncing around a little bit, and I felt it more in my shoulder too.
More mass moving downrange.
But what's interesting is both crimp styles are feeding reliably in the Sentry 12.
Yep, they are. And I mean, again, you could get tighter patterns in this, but from a combat shotgun at 10 yards, this is more than respectable. All right, let's paint it up. Let me give it a try. All right, so I'm going to walk you through the manual of arms on this. Very AR-15-like. There is a safety on both the left and right side of the gun, so it's fully ambidextrous. 90-degree throw. It is not interchangeable with an AR-15 part, but functions the same way. Magazine release here, just like you'd expect on an AR-15. The mags do not drop free. You have to pull them out manually. That's intentional. They wanted you to retain your mags. And then this is your bolt release. So the bolt forward, if I want to release it without firing, I push down on this, then I can open the action. Got a couple magazines here of just standard birdshot. I'm going to blast the target just to get some rounds in. Yeah, works great. Oops. Ha! Like I said, you have to pull the mag off deck, put the new one on. That's 2 mags. I don't need to go with 3, but no problems whatsoever. Super smooth, easy to cycle. Rounds are exactly where I'd want them on target. At this moment, I have to say this thing's kind of impressive, and I'm always a little skeptical about magazine-fed shotguns or shotguns in general.
All right, I got some Federal 1-ounce slugs. We're at 25 yards. I'm going to shoot 3 of them. Not bad for just laser bore sighting it. No actual zeroing with rounds through the gun. I got 1 round of the Estate 9-pellet double-aught buck. We'll see how it patterns at 25.
All right, so your slug shots were great.
Yep.
This thing did well. Now you just fired 1 round of 9-pellet bottom of the barrel Estate buckshot at 25 yards.
Yep.
How many are on the target?
It's like all 9 are there. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So all 9 pellets hit an IDPA size target at 25. Now, if you're using like flight control or something, that might be better.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on getting all 9 pellets on the target at this distance unless you're using one of those Federal flight control rounds.
Yep. You want to do slugs at 50?
Yeah, let's back up and throw some more slugs at it.
Okay. All right, so we're at 50 yards. This is top of the line Rio 1-ounce slugs. Let's see how this does with pretty much garbage tier ammo. Oh, they had a mouth, but that's probably Rio. That was easy. Well, I had 1 malfunction, which was Rio. I mean, Rio ammo's not good, but most of those hits were no problemo, even with that garbage tier ammo and a less than optimal 0. So this gun can't hold its own with slugs at distance. Looks like you're loading up a dog's lunch of ammo there.
Yeah, we got an Estate birdshot, Wolf buckshot, Winchester AA, Federal something, Federal birdshot, Winchester Super Sporting Clays, it's kind of rusted, Estate, and Rio buckshot.
Well, let's see if that runs.
All right, Dog's Lunch magazine. So 1 stuck in the chamber. And looking at the base of this, it's swelled out under firing, so not necessarily the fault of the gun. It's that Federal bulk pack crap. All right, the teardown on this thing's really simple. You need a wrench to undo the barrel nut. You can just spin it out. Pull the barrel out. Toasty out here in the sun. You're going to push your rear takedown pin out. It's an HK style pin, the detent built into it. Your fire control group will fall off, and then the bolt and fore-end assembly come out. And that's it, just 4 major components.
That's pretty simple.
So
let's go back together.
Bolt back in. Getting it lined back up to go back in is a little bit trickier. And you do need to have the pump to the rear to do that. Pin back in. Make sure the pump is to the rear. You put the barrel in. Make sure it's seated all the way. And then give it a good snug with your wrench. And you may want to like witness mark your barrel nut so that you tighten it to the same position every time, particularly if you're zeroing it with slugs.
All right, so we had pretty good performance today. We had, what, 2 ammunition related issues?
Yeah, one with maybe the way the crimp unfolded in the Rio, and that Federal bulk pack birdshot, the rim itself swelled and stuck a little bit in the chamber.
Other than that, we had no issues with either the 8 or the 10 round, or excuse me, the 8 or the 5 round magazines, correct?
Yep.
Now, that is not what happened the first time we went out to film.
We had a number of issues with the 5 round mags the first time.
So what you're not seeing is this is the second attempt at this video. The first time we brought it out, we ran into a number of issues. We had issues with the magazines themselves, the 5 rounders in particular, with certain ammunition. Some ammunition would work, some would not, but most of it would not. Once you got it loaded, the rounds would get stuck in there because it was just swollen. It was too tight for the round to actually like rise to be chambered by the bolt.
Right, which is indicative of a processing issue with the polymer magazine mold. Too much shrink coming out of the press.
We also had a bunch of like essentially ejection issues where they were just raining out of the gun too easily. It was like super easy to just accidentally eject rounds.
Right.
None of that happened today.
No, it didn't.
So what happened? You sent the gun back?
Yeah, they had us send the gun back into them. They had it flipped around in 2 days for us.
Okay.
And I had a whole nother batch of 8-round magazines I had purchased come back with it.
So the 8-round mags that we used today were all great?
Great.
And the 5-round rounds we're using today were okay too?
They were better.
They were better.
But we did still find a few ammunition types that are hanging up with them. The good thing is, if you want to test your magazines, you don't even have to actually shoot them.
No. All you do is load them up, and you can see on the video here that they just kind of like slowly go doink. And if that's what's happening, not compatible.
Yeah, don't use that ammo. But if they just thumb out normally, it's pretty much safe to use.
So if you were using this for something serious, or even for competition for that matter, besides anything besides, you know, shooting at washing machines in the desert, you'd want to make sure that your magazines and your ammunition are compatible. And it seemed like the 5-rounders were more picky than the 8s.
Correct.
That had probably something to do with their mold.
Or processing,
Yep.
like I said. So
another thing you notice is that this gun seems to run better if you're squared off rather bladed.
right, so because the length of pull is like 12 inches, for us, I'm like 6 feet tall. I don't know how tall you are.
Just a little smidge over that.
Okay, so it's almost a little too short for us. It's made to be shot from a squared up position. So,
Yeah, so
if you do it bladed, what can happen is it makes the length of throw for the pump a little bit harder to actuate.
So then if I square off, it's actually more solid.
You're not bottoming out your support arm that's working the pump as easily.
Nope.
So if you're shorter, you can probably get away with a bladed shooting stance, but if you're taller, square up, and I don't think you'll have any cycling issues with it.
Which may have very well been intentional in why they got to this length, because one of which is potentially body armor, right? And this was designed to be a tactical combat-oriented shotgun. And blading off isn't really the standard training doctrine for the most part today. It's usually squaring off, mostly to present armor to face of enemy.
Correct.
Which would make sense when you're using this in a combat role.
Right.
So,
that said, if I could, I'd like a spacer to make it 13-inch length of pull, just so it's the same as all the rifles I shoot all the time.
now it's just 2 screws here. You might be able to do that.
Yeah, and they may come up with a spacer themselves that just stacks underneath of there. So,
well, I gotta say, so there are other little caveats. You mentioned one other thing about this may be coming loose.
right. After I started torquing it down with a wrench, it didn't come loose on its own, but out of the box it worked its way loose on me when I was doing some of that initial shooting. After cranking it down the wrench, it didn't. Like I said, witness marking it is a end user way to verify that it's staying in place, but I did recommend to them that a detent style system like the magazine extension tube or tube cap on an 870 would be a good idea.
Something clickety or ratchety.
Yep.
Would make sense. Any other thoughts of product improvement besides that it really did run well today?
Everyone that I've shown this to is asking for a side folder.
Interesting. Yeah, why have length when you don't need it, right?
Right.
Yep.
So whether they do a side folder themselves or put a little section of Picatinny on the back to use MPX, MCX stocks or all the other aftermarket stuff that's coming out for those, that'd be pretty cool.
Fair, fair. But as a magazine-fed shotgun goes, pump action, this thing turned out after we sent it back and they shipped it around in just a couple days. Turns out to be pretty rad.
Yep. And I'm going to be using it at the end of October in the Halloween shotgun match.
Yeah, that's cool. So now this, they did not send this to us for free. You bought this.
Yes. I got it on sale for $700.
Okay.
Normally they're $900 MSRP.
Okay. Quite reasonable, really.
Right. You know, magazine-fed shotguns always have their idiosyncrasies, and just one go-around of sending it back and getting good magazines, it's pretty minor on the idiosyncrasy scale for my experience with magazine-fed shotguns.
Yeah, and that last thing we did where we fed it a dog's lunch of ammo and it worked, with the exception of having to kind of like firmly eject that one round that was kind of messed up in the first place, being garbage ammo, kind of proved it to be pretty reliable.
Right.
Now that said, you're going to have to do a lot more with it to really know that for sure. I mean, how many rounds do we have through this at this point?
Probably a total of 400.
Yeah, that's not enough. So don't consider this the conclusive conclusion. But for our conclusion so far, after one go around having them work on it, this gun's running great, and it's a pretty interesting thing brought to the market for tactically oriented, combat oriented shotguns.
And you know, in a tactical or self-defense role, people aren't going to be shooting low quality ammo through it.
No, that's a good point.
So a lot of the stuff we use in training and matches as far as shotgun ammo goes, you just wouldn't be using through this gun if you're using it seriously.
No, if you were doing buckshot, you should absolutely be using flight control. You should be using the best stuff you can get your hands on.
Right.
Of course, it is 2021, in which you might be trying to cobble together ammunition from something you found out of matches in your box.
But that estate buckshot I got at Sportsman's Warehouse on the shelf worked fine.
Yeah, it did. Cool. Any other thoughts?
No, it's just a pretty neat gun. It's nice to see companies doing innovative things in the marketplace and that are responsive to customer problems and resolve them in a timely manner. So
yeah,
nothing but professionalism from the guys at Iron Horse. Much friendlier and easier to deal with than some of the companies we've dealt with issues before. So.
Sure. And you know, when you bring new things to the market, there's teething issues. That happens.
Yep.
Right. Especially with polymer mags. Gosh, polymer. We know a lot about that, huh?
Yep.
So in that regard, everything we did today, except for the gun itself, was supported by Patreon. The ammunition, all the stuff, the money to get out here, the effort, being here in this hot sun was because of viewers like you, because this is a completely viewer-funded project. No sponsors. Iron Horse didn't send this to us. This was purchased. And they didn't send us the ammunition, and we give you the most honest reviews possible. So it's because of viewers like you that keep InRange alive. Thank you for doing it. If you can't, understand, subscribe to the channel. But more importantly than anything, share with your friends if you like this content, because the algorithm doesn't really promote InRange because, well, it's a gun channel on YouTube. If you share with your friends, you're organically fighting that algorithm. Thanks for watching.